Before we begin, we'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we're recording on, the Wurundjeri Willam clan and Tongarong people, and give our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. We encourage everyone listening to consider the traditional owners of the land they're living and thriving on, and consider the benefits that may come from a treaty with the First Peoples. This is, was, and always will be Aboriginal land.
Hello and welcome to the first episode of Create and Amplify, a podcast spotlighting creatives with disability in their own words. Kath Duncan is a writer, a researcher, a director, a provocateur, a visual artist, a comedian, a producer, a journalist, a radio broadcaster, and disability advocate, as well as a self-proclaimed super freak. Kath has a passion for experimental performance arts and is inherently political, shaped by her unique perspectives. Kath firmly believes in the inherent creative revolutions and endless inspiration within all impairments. Kath has degrees in arts communications, sound extension, creative writing, and a master's in writing theatre from VCA. Kath produced her one-woman show, High Heartbreak, in 2016, led the Australian Research Council project The Last Avant-Garde Deaf Disability Performance around Australia. Kath won the 2020 Creative Australia Rosbauer Award for Community Arts and Cultural Development. Kath's latest project is Specials, a disability-centric agit-pop drama set in the 1980s. Welcome, Kath.
Hey, thank you. Welcome, everyone, and thanks for that long list of great things about me.
You would never know you're 21 given all your accomplishments.
Actually, you know what? I'm about to be 64.
64, wow.
I didn't know such numbers actually really happen to people, but they do.
I feel like a psychologist because my first questions are going all the way back to your childhood. So let's start there and see how we go. So you say in your bio that you were born different. Can you describe what different means to you?
In my case, born different means that in the womb, we think between about 6 to 10 weeks of development. See this like little tiny thing, you know, maybe only about 2 centimetres big-ish. And because before 6 weeks, you're protected from your mum's up and downs, body temperatures, viruses, infections largely, right? And then after 10 weeks, same thing applies. But there's this window of opportunity between 6 and 10 weeks. And what happens in that stage, and you know how a lot of medicos, gynecologists tell women, don't tell everyone that you're expecting until you're 3 months. It's to kind of cover that period where all sorts of weird shit goes on. So to cut a long story short, in utero at that time, my mum had this, she remembers, she and my father were on a little holiday up through Queensland, and mum felt really sick and just kept puking and crapping and she knew, because I was my mum's third pregnancy, she knew that this was abnormal, and she actually got quite panicked and said to my father, oh my goodness, like if we don't do something, I could lose this baby. She felt that sick. So they gave her this antibiotic, which maybe didn't really help, but you know, at least, no, actually I think it did. I think the antibiotic was the reason I'm still here, really. Cut a long story short, what can happen at that time, and in my case, was that, as the doctors put it, my limb buds were forming, right? And what happened is I got interrupted. So I was developing arms and legs, and I got interrupted, and everything stopped for a moment, because what happens cellularly is the organism keeps the brain and the central nervous system developing, well, it goes, oh, well, we're just going to stop attention to the bits that don't matter. So serious to God. So generally you get miscarried, right? Then, right? And they figure girls are more tenacious than boys at hanging on in there. And I hung in there. But when the development started again, it never really caught up. And in fact, now that I'm nearly 64, the left, in my case, it's a global effect, but just talking arms because it's easy to see. Even as an adult, the whole thing, the left arm and the right arm grow at different rates. So when I was a child, this arm was longer in reference. It's just weird as hell. So I'm the sort of thing that happens. So just going around my body, just globally, right? So I have about half a left arm. I've only got 4 toes in the entire world on my left leg. And then if we go over to my right leg, I have just 2/3 of the way to a knee.
Oh, wow.
But when I was born, there were little toes on it that they removed. Oh, sorry to get really graphic about this. It's an unformed right hip, and I wear a prosthetic on that leg generally. And then I've got kind of almost a normal, whatever that is, right hand. But I've got this little tiny little finger. It's not a proper one. So I've got all these sorts of, a smaller jaw. It's just all part of this kind of global of, let's stop developing and then live or die. And then, no, let's keep going. But I'm like 3/4 cooked. Sorry, that took forever.
So you grew up one of 4 sisters. Is that right? 4 sisters?
There's 4 of us all together. So there's 3 sisters, 1 brother.
So tell me what that was like.
Well, I'm the middle child. I think I had the best position. Because the eldest one had to be all keeping to the rules. And the next one down was my brother. Actually, he had to keep to the rules too. But by the time the 3rd child came around, which was me, I got to be the one that got to run away at family outings and go and throw rocks at the something and smash this on the something, because the other 2, just being slightly older and always having to keep to the rules, got more attention in a negative way, I always thought, than I did. I feel like I got away with a lot. And then there were the 2 sisters born, and that was fabulous because the next one under me is like a twin. I don't remember Beth never being there, my sister. They're like close as my heart. It's like me and the 2 younger sisters. It's like we're actually triplets. We just got separated by time. Like, I absolutely adore them. They're probably the only people in the world I trust. And I mean that in a really nice way, not in a negative way. But they're, we're really close. But I was so naughty as a kid. I don't want to go into it. But I was so naughty and willful. And I think I learned really young that if I cripply, because I'm really obviously cripply, and particularly when I was a kid, when I had like a proper hook arm metal fiberglass prosthetic thing strapped on, and my leg was much more jointed and clunky and weird in those days and stuff. But I learned that if I stood there and just blink, blink, blink and stared up at the person in authority and just looked really cripply, that I got away with stuff. I'm not saying everyone does, okay? But I certainly was naughty.
It's something you can have in your back pocket that you pull out when you need to.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've got a very don't give a fuck, I'm myself, whether you like it or not sort of attitude to you. Was there anything that happened when you were growing up, an event or something that gave you that confidence to just be yourself no matter what anyone thinks? Or do you think it comes with time and experience now that you're nearly 64?
I often say to people, if you met my family, you'd understand. Like, I'm actually the quiet, contemplative, thoughtful, reserved member of the family.
You're the quiet one.
I'm the quiet.
Wow.
Quiet. But we're all really loud and expressive. And actually, my family can be difficult to go out with because we come from Bogan Nation. We really do in Sydney. We come from Bogan Nation where people get in fights and shout and all that. And if you meet every member of my family, you can kind of work out a whole class sort of thing. It's like this, lower middle class, Bogan, aspiring, quite conservative background I come from, really. And I don't know if you've noticed this about right-wing people, because I come from a very right-wing family, is that they talk too much and they just keep shouting on what they think about. Well, that's, where I come from. So it's very natural to me to kind of go, oh, what's going on here? And just to like bowl myself into any situation as though I've got a right to be there. Deary dear. But anyway, back to confidence. Right. So oddly, between the ages of 6 and 12, my parents were told that I would get a lot more confidence if I did drama classes. And so they signed us up with this really lovely local neighbourhood. Just, in those days, people walked further and stuff, but we were the outer suburbs back in the day of Sydney. We walked just a block and a bit up the road for these drama classes every Saturday. And once a year, we would put on a production. And that was my favourite time. It was just so fantastic because they booked this really lovely theatre, which no longer exists, unfortunately, in Sydney. And I was just fascinated by everything. I loved the curtains and the lights and the this and the that. And my parents were told I would get more confident if I did that. And they were right. Worked.
What draws you to the arts, do you think?
I honestly think there's nowhere else to be. What happened at Sydney Uni, and I was so lucky at the time because they cancelled it 10 years later, was that I'd come top of my high school at economics. Always loved economics, just as a political system and systems, as ways of reading like global markets. I love economics. But back to the thing. So at the time, I'd done really well in economics, and so you could do the straight economics strand or you could do the political economics strand. And I said, yeah, no, I'll do that. And one thing I've always argued about life is always take the experimental option. I mean, there's safe and unsafe. I don't want people to be unsafe, but always try something new because it's amazing what comes out of those moments. And I ended up taking the political economics strand, and it was later regarded as being this Marxist radical whatever. But to me, it was just one of the best educations I've ever had. It was just remarkable. And there was this one time I was living right next to the new theatre in Newtown in this really dingy rented house. I moved out of home. But the weird thing was I was studying accounting at the same time. And we get to the end of the first semester. Back in those days, there were 3 semesters, like school, So we're getting to the end of first semester. And I pride myself, I was always a great scholar, right? But I look up at the board at the accounting results, and I failed with the 3rd best failure of the semester. And it was really in my face that this was not the way forward, that I didn't have a lot of aptitude for those little details and they, believe it or not, accounting's mad. They call everything all these weird different names. It's like, I don't know, it's almost like learning science again or something. It's a pain in the ass. But what happened was I was living next door to the new theatre, and I got involved with this group of young people who were working out of City Road Seymour Centre, which was just down the road from where I was. It was like a K and a half. I rarely walked it because I've never really been into walking great distances.
Me either.
But this very handy bus run that just ran straight down there. It was just fabulous. And I started just moving in those circles. Political economics, failed at accounting, and just really connected with these people because back in the day, and I'm assuming performing people are still doing this, which is that's where you'll find people who are questioning every ism they've ever had, their racism, classism, sexism, ageism, ableism is through the arts. I'm sorry. You can argue till you're blue in the face that no, you really find that in medicine or you really find that in social work, but I argue it's where the arts is. It's where people like myself find sex, love, meaning, place, money, validation, ongoing career professionalization, and all the rest. Sorry, that was a bit of a rant.
We've talked a bit about your art being inherently political. Are there any philosophies or disability models, I suppose, that you live by?
Is my work inherently political? Or is that because I'm really different, so it looks that way? Because if I was to look at my body of work, and I have to sometimes to go, oh, I've done this, 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 and this, I would argue that a lot of it's very artistically hedonistic. I don't know how that will translate, hedonistic. It's about pleasure. And it's about where my brain and mind and body are going, oh, gosh, I really want to know about that. And I've been doing that since I remember the first show I ever sold as a freelance to any output, because back in the day, no internet, right, was a show about female masturbation that we called Having a Rotation. And it was the first thing I ever sold. And so it's somehow inherently political, some of it, because it's specifically about a specific topic. But what's always driven me is this curiosity that's very self-generated, or I don't go the distance. So our most recent work, Specials, yes, is very heavily and obviously political. But not all my work's like that. And I would still argue there's something about this determination to put injustices into story that is actually bizarrely going to make people laugh. So I know that all seems very contradictory, doesn't it?
You were talking about having a curiosity. How do you know when you have an idea that's worth following? Or is it just back to what you were talking about, experimenting and not being afraid to experiment?
For me, it's very physical, talking about Specials, because it's right in my face at the moment. I probably could talk about some of the other things if I thought about it, but Specials is really in my face. So I had to, back in the early 2000s, the internet was just starting, and I had to write a list of all the educational institutions I'd gone to. And so I was just listing them because I've been to a lot. I've got 4 degrees and I've attempted another one at some dump. Oh, another 3 other dumps I've attempted this stuff at before getting the degrees at these other places. You know what I mean? Like, da, 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 da. So I was writing it all down, and I was going backwards, as you do. And I remember that fucking special school and this wave of rage and hatred and this sort of like, let's just blow it all up, just swept over me. Like a period beginning, or I don't know, or nausea. It was very physical. And I've felt that before about different ideas I've had, that for me it's this, oh, that's an interesting idea, that's cute, I'll have a look at that. And I do little bits of journalism here and there, but mainly on the internet, and it doesn't pay me anything, la, la, la. But the things that occupy me physically, I can feel it now that I'm just going, that fucking dumb.
Let's keep talking about Specials, because I feel like we're going to bring it up along the way anyway. So let's talk about it now, how that came about. So you wrote the list, you felt the feeling. What do you do next?
I wanted to see the evidence. So by the time I was looking into special ed, I think I was in my early 40s or late 30s. And I had been a journalist in Sydney and had worked at the ABC and had worked here and worked there and knew how to get into archives and how to find stuff and blah, blah, blah. In the early days of the internet, we were already starting to troll for things and this and that, particularly with, government offices. You'd be able to get documents. So I knew there was a whole process to get hold of, what I would call evidence. And being a journalist too, I had this belief that I could be completely wrong about what a terrible place it was, because I know how much children and young adults and me exaggerate stuff. So it's interesting, it's a colourful story, blah, blah, blah. So my curiosity was to get hold of as much evidence as possible and look at it and start from there. And so I knew the best way to get to do evidence was to have just completed my honours degree at Southern Cross Uni, which is at Lismore. That was a great year. No, it was a really intense year. Honours is terrible. Have you ever done honours, Nick?
I haven't.
It's brutal.
Specifically because I thought it would be really intense.
It is.
Yeah.
It's hell. But as it turned out, because I was doing a story I was really interested in, which just had nothing to do with any of this, I got a first class. And as it turned out, getting a first class honours can propel you straight into doing a PhD, not just a PhD, but a PhD with quite a nice scholarship attached for 3 years, which is enough to get a mortgage at the time. But that's another story. I'm not going to go into that. To cut a long story short, I applied to do a PhD because I knew it would be the entree to all that evidence, which I'd used to have as a journalist, but no longer really had. But I knew how to look for things. So after that, I just tried not to think about my feelings. And you can do that, I think, as a researcher, even if it's really, really close. But then you'll get these moments where that wall just shatters, literally explodes. And you realize, wow, as I did, going to that place was an absolute horror shit show. And no wonder I feel that way about it. So yeah, that's where it started. And it started by the time I was writing the PhD proposal application. I knew I wanted to do a narrative thing because, I mean, I was a journalist, so I knew all the tricks, but what I really wanted to do was to turn it into this sort of drama. And a really rough idea whether it was going to be a text or a film script or a play, or I didn't really have much of an idea, but I just knew I wanted to collect the evidence. So I also started writing these bizarre autobiographical things. And Nick, you know that speech of yours that we've turned into the I never wanted to go here, my parents were fooled into, whatever it is. And it's the first really big emotional moment. So I ended up being able to track down 11 students who'd gone to that horror dump that I'd gone to in Sydney between about late 1950s and into the early 70s. So 11 across that time period. And one of them was this student who obviously had some sort of learning disability, but I didn't require that people tell me what was wrong with them unless they really wanted to, you know what I mean? And I said to her, have you ever thought about, going back and looking at the place? And that was when she went, no, I never do. I never even want to hear that. I never did. And it was just this, and I was like, oh my God, like you could just feel that what I felt for being there for effectively 5 years. I'd gone to their preschool and then I went to their actual school. It was all special, and I was there for 8 years, 6 years, something like that. And maths has always been terrible. A lot of us blame our special school for our maths. All of us do, actually. Whenever I get together with anyone else who went to such a dump, we all laugh about how bad we are at maths because something's got to connect. You've got to have a curriculum really early on to learn maths and get it into your head, you know what I mean? But back to the point, that I'd been stuck there for a certain period of time. But when I talked to the amazing goddess, and she's passed now, unfortunately, Faye Druitt, goddess Faye Druitt. Everyone in New South Wales knows Faye. She said, special school taught me to be depressed. Full stop. So as I was getting this really emotional material from the interviews, that's when I started to think about what if there was a boy and a girl, because I had a boyfriend and a girlfriend, but they were my very intense friends, my ride or die buddies between 6 and 9. And their names were Cheryl and Simon. And I was really, really close to them. Cheryl had the most amazing hair. I'll never forget Cheryl's hair. I remember I would take the memory of Cheryl's hair to the grave. And Simon was exactly as I describe him. But to cut a long story short, so I started to think, what if, one of them had to stay there and the other one, like me, had left, and then they bump into each other? Because one of the horror, shame streams in this story had to do with the notion of internalized ableism, or as we might understand it, this hierarchy of disabilities. Because when by the time I ran screaming away from special school at the age of 9, I was humiliated and embarrassed if ever I saw a disabled person out, because I didn't want to go back there. So it left me with this real scar around what disability is. And so I thought, what if then they had to work together to break down the system? And that's really where it started. And believe it or not, and so all sorts of life things happened. I moved to Melbourne, blah, 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 blah. And just in 2020, COVID hit. Me and Sonia, we were both unemployed, but we started to write specials in these different characters like this. So Sonia would be the headmistress and I'd be Simon and this and that. And I'd sent Sonia all my evidence. And so that's how it started. And then in 2021, I studied my last degree so far, the Masters in Theatre Writing at VCA. And that was where it all came together. And my tutory folk, my writery, mentory, teachery folk really encouraged me to keep working on specials. And so that's why I grabbed you at the end of the year and said, let's do this reading. And so that's how it all kind of that's how it all developed. Yeah.
Did you do your Masters of Theatre Writing specifically with the idea of wanting to develop specials, or would you have done the Masters in Theatre Writing anyway, do you think?
No, I'm kind of old enough now, and I've done enough postgrad now to know you've got to go into postgrad with the project, and it's got to be something that you really want to do to get through the year, because it sucks. Like, it's such hard work. They expect you to read a shitload, write a hell load, do, 15 different strands of what you're doing and hand in works on it and read on it and talk on it and blah, 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 and all the rest all year. So, so I walked in wanting to develop 2 plays. I actually wanted to develop 2.5. But I got 2 considerably done, and one was specials and the other one was High Heartbreak, because I wanted to have... High Heartbreak was a one-person show that I put on in 2018 or 2016, back at Hares and Heaney's, just a one-person show with kind of guests, right? And I wanted to develop that as a plane crash, because I love plane crashes. Like, my favourite TV show is Air Crash Investigation. Nothing beats Air Crash Investigation. I've always wanted to have a plane crash in something that I made. And so that year I decided to go into the year working on my High Heartbreak, which is like a breakup, love and death story. And actually, again, it's based on stuff that actually happened, because I had to fly to my ex-partner's funeral. And it was sort of about that flight, but the whole thing goes wrong. But there's ghosts on the plane with the funeral flying person, and the person next to her turns into a bird and is one of the few survivors. And at the end, as we see the wreckage, the other character is this bird sitting on top of this nest doing something else as this one goes off to the funeral. And it's just, I developed both. But specials just had more bite, I guess. You know what I mean? Like, less, just had real that's terrible to say that about my own stuff. You know what I mean?
I'm imagining that specials was very cathartic, but also confronting for you, being the person that went through it. As somebody that seems to feel emotions very intensely, was there ever times, even when we were rehearsing, that it was too much, or that you needed to take time out from writing it or anything like that?
I think that such a personal story, but there's something about, I think I struggled most with, I wanted to make one of the non-disabled characters sort of reasonable, like a bit of a voice of reason, and it just didn't work. And that was Mr. Ginger. And I remember one class, no, it was with you guys, with Raimondo, sorry. It was a workshop with us and Raimondo, and we were talking about Mr. Ginger, and he just seemed really flat. He's the sporty teachers, like, come on kids, throw away those wheelchairs and all that nonsense. You don't need that. Does you need his belief and follow me and jolly hopping sticks and diddly-do balloon basketball time, because that's all you can do. Hey, that character had started as kind of the non-disabled voice of reason, and in my life, that character, as a little kid would see it, saved me. So it was really hard to write in the actual character of Mr. Ginger, because he just didn't work in this hellscape that was the rest of the place. And I guess it's a mystery that still stays with me, is how there was the Mr. Ginger character, a man who I adored and saved me, and everybody else. I still can't make all that sit together. And that's, the reality. So I do remember at that point feeling really quite teary. Like, so Jack, so just write it opposite, Kath. So that if they say, the principal's fairy godmother, sorry, your principal's a fairy godmother. And I was like, oh my God, that's perfect. But I lost Mr. Ginger then, the original Mr. Ginger. And I do remember having I can feel it now, I'm still having this really emotional moment about it. I'm sort of thinking, shit, I just wonder if at some point into the future I've ever get it published that I should write this forward. Oh, I don't know. But that was a real emotional moment for me, I've got to admit. And there were probably lots of others. It's just that's one that sort of stands out.
I know that because we've done some development showings at the Arts House, and I know that there's more specials is hopefully going to do in the future. Can you tell us a bit about, even if you can't say what you're up to right now, can you tell us what the vision is for the project going forward?
A lot of, I think, production making is about roles, because I can't be everything. So in this particular, it's really funny. A year ago, Arts House said to me, Kath, but don't you want to direct? Because effectively on everything, I'm the playwright, I'm the writer, right? And I was like, yeah, I do, yeah. Oh, I've never got to direct anything. And me. And then a couple of months go by and doing the first development with you guys. And I sit back and having a reality check, and I think I fucking don't want to be the fucking director. Are you fucking mad? So I get onto Arts House. I get onto my producer for the next phase, which is when this is going to be an issue, because I've already got a director for the first chunk. I don't have to direct the first chunk, but I was going to direct the second chunk. So it is about roles. So if you say, what is the vision for the future? My quirky brain that really just loves being the writer goes, God, I can't wait to see. I don't know. But the parameters go like this. So, because I'm hoping it's a crazy looking visual picture, but I've got other people doing the visual stuff, and I want to just be the writer. Do you know what I mean? Like, It's like this complicated, because it's different if you say doing a quipping show like I used to do, or just the producer, we all turn up, let's talk ideas, blah, 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 blah. Let's program the music. On you go, poof, mic on, mic off, mic on. But with specials, it's sort of quite a team. So the vision, the parameters at the moment are that we do 7 shows at the end of March in 2026. With you guys, there's like the 3 kind of leads, you might say, and 2 extras that we'll audition for. And that me and my production team, like the non-performer team, have meetings. You know what we're going to do, Nicole? You know what we're going to do? Guess what? We're going to lock off the script. We're going to lock off the script.
Kath, I say this with love. Are you capable of locking off a script?
I think I've accepted that I must.
Can you tell me, what is it that you, and this might be a huge conversation and that's fine. Can you tell me, what is it that you hope to get from a piece of art?
I don't like to be bored, because I actually leave theatres because I'm got a very short attention span, and I hate being bored. And so what I want is to be provoked. So I don't want something, just think of a few shows I've seen where I'm like, oh, because they're just nice. I like shows, so I go, fuck, what are they doing that for? Even if it's weird. Look at that. And I've seen lots of shows. I haven't seen so much lately. COVID has sort of ruined my show schedule. I don't know if I'll ever get it back again, but I don't like anything that goes on for too long. I want the action to keep going. So even as a young one, because I used to study film at UTS and other places and blah, blah. And lots of people are into French films, so those really long sort of, like a balcony with flowers on or something. And this really endless sort of sweeping camera thing. I think it's called camera panning, blah, 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 blah. I don't like that. I like things to keep moving. I've been watching the Yellowstone series, Taylor Sheridan. I don't know his name quite right there. But anyway, I like stuff where it really moves. But if there are laughs in it, I will put up with a lot. So if someone's going to make me laugh, that's the best possible thing. And I'll even put up with bits of boredom if there's going to be laughs in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you don't mind being, because I know some people would be offended by different things. You like being provoked and given different points of view.
I like to be annoyed even. Because you remember the things that annoy you. You don't remember things that are just nice.
At least you know it affected you. Yeah.
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 I guess it's something to think about later.
Are there any pieces of art, I'm putting you on the spot now, but are there any pieces of art, it could be a painting or a theatre show or whatever, that have affected you positively and you've become speechless or
God, all of it.
all of it?
Bulk of my artistic experiences as a consumer, as opposed to a maker, it's just like rapture. I remember, actually, funny you should say what's affected you a lot. I just remember at this, I was 21 and me and my friend Megan were in New York City. We got into the Guggenheim and we were just going around these big circles, like big circular sort of gallery, and being at one side of it and looking across and seeing this contemporary Italian painting exhibition, and this particular painting of this, like a purple slash, like he'd ripped a piece of paper and there was this girl flinging herself up into the water and this grotto and this and that. It was this big, colourful thing. I'll never forget seeing that and just going, and the beauty about the Guggenheim is you slowly work your way around it so you can watch the painting from different angles before you finally get up right next to it. You know what I mean? But all of it, I've often thought, I was about to say I often think about death. Well, I do actually, but I was sort of thinking selfishly about death. I was thinking, God damn it. No offense to anyone, but I'm not going to miss people so much or places. I'm going to miss all the media and all the films and all the great texts and books I won't get to read. And that upsets me more than anything. Aren't I awful? But it's like this, it just feeds this very ever questioning mind, I like to be sort of always having something. Oh, why don't I look up something or other, So at the moment I'm writing grant applications and it's like, it's a pig in research poo heaven paradise thing, you know what I mean? I just love it. And I get to go, yeah, that weird film, I'll just look at that because that could be research. I mean, to me, research is the lifeblood of everything. Like there isn't a single idea that I thought turned even into the dumbest, stupidest 5 minutes, something or other. I haven't gone, I just want to look up, how does such feel about the colours. What's the era and all this? Because you just kind of build this picture. And for me, the research is the really, it's kind of like you're making the creature and you're making all the skeletal thing and building up some of the muscle, and the creativity is all the fur and the eyes. You know what I mean? Woofy tail.
I love that so much. I love that. Can you tell me about whether you have a creative process? Because often I'll have ideas that maybe I want to write something like you write specials, but I'll have my own idea about something that I want to write. But I find the discipline of actually sitting down and writing it or thinking about it quite difficult. Do you have a creative process?
Well, I didn't study economics for nothing. I mean, I'm sorry, I say I come up with all these woofy ideas, but my first thought always with any idea that's going to sit in my brain for longer than a few minutes is, who would buy this? Like, where could this go? And if I can think of something, now that doesn't have to be a broadcaster, that could be, what university would I be able to develop this at? What group, what something? It's just, it's fairly lateral. But quite often that's how that works for me. It sounds really commercial and sort of like I'm just using stuff. But, that's just what works for me. So I have really crazy ideas, but I'm sort of thinking, I'll just run. I don't always work that out in my head. I'll find someone like Veronica, like my president producer, and I'll go, I was thinking about da. Like, who might want that? And Veronica's quite honest. She might go, God, no one, Kath. She hasn't actually said that, but you know what I mean? It might be some realistic thing. But, you know, she might go, oh, you could think about this, you could think about that, and la, la, la. And because that whole sort of research idea comes quite naturally to me, and I'm quite a sort of speed reader, like I can kind of look at a site, look at a grant, look at a thing and go, yes, no, you know, like reasonably quickly.
Yeah.
So that's my thing. So yes, there's the emotional thing, but even if I had that huge emotional rush and thought, God, there's no way I can do the research on this, I don't think I could do it without having the university like stipend, because I've never been wealthy. I've never had money. So it's always had to be, maybe that also determines it, you know, like if I'd been, had from a wealthy family, I could be much more poetic about why I choose to pursue certain, creative explorations. But it's always come down to who would pay for this? Where would this go? And yeah, so that's part of my process. What's the market? Yeah, and I don't do that by myself. Often we'll drag in someone else at that point who's really honest to go, God, would anyone want this? To be honest, and with all due respect to everyone who actually does make money out of visual arts, the stuff I make in little scrapbooks and this and that and art and stuff, I do that out of love. That's just love.
Yeah.
And colour.
What would you say? You've been really helpful for me in terms of being able to pick your brain, and I don't think this podcast would be happening if it wasn't for your support. But what would you say for upcoming artists, particularly those with a disability?
You have to find a team. You have to be a decent team player and to be able to work with other people. And they don't have to be disabled people. Be whoever's around you or whoever's got some creative interest. Now, that's not to say you have to have the same team all your life. Like I've worked in, I don't know how many production teams, because I used to make films and all sorts of little features, bits of television, bits of this and that, all sorts of bits of print, blah, blah, blah. But so I've worked in, I don't know, 100 different production teams. So over time, if you want to work on something that's going to last a bit, you have to drag people into your orbit with you. And that takes real skills and quite often that creative skills, so that you work on theirs, they'll work on yours, some exchange there. And if you can get that going, you can start applying for funds. It's really hard to apply for funds if you're just a solo sort of item. You sort of have to have a team around you. They don't have to be anyone special even. Don't have to be someone with a great background in this, that and the other. But you have to have a team. And it's also really good at helping you explain and critique your own work. Because it's very hard to tell if your idea is crap or good unless other people are there and unless they can be honest, unless you can trust them and blah, 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 blah. So to me, setting up a team is really important. Now, intergenerationally though, like just in terms of, like helping you with stuff and this and that and the other, my feeling is that like a disability artist, and I consider myself more of an artist than an activist. I think sometimes my activism is accidental just because of who I am, rather than me wanting to necessarily, hey, up against the barricades or whatever, because I hate meetings. But look, so when I started out as a journalist, you just to move really fast, you had to have some political perspectives that you could carry through in your interviewings and your talking and this and that and the other. And I got sick of having that. And I got sick of everything having to have a point. So I do think just because I'm disabled and I find disability interesting, that my work can be read, except for specials, that my work in general can be read as whatever you want to make of it. Like, whatever you make of the plane crash with the lesbian, dead, love affair, ghosts, toilet, sex person sitting next to someone turning into a bird with a sort of a gender neutral, trolley person going up and down, throwing out some really weird lines in the middle of it and all that. Whatever you want to make of that, if you want to make that political, so be it. Specials is different though, because I've really got some real purpose with specials. But I like to think I'm kind of really obvious about that. But I think a lot of the rest of what I've done, it gets read as being very, politically strong and all the rest because it's disability led. And so be it. I'm really happy with that. But where do I define myself? Not very comfortably in there, maybe. Oh, so I like to write grants every day for about 6 weeks out from when the grant's due. So it slowly trickles and moves along. I like to pace myself with working and stuff like that. So, but when do I get back to specials to play? Because I've got this crazy idea about what else we can do with it. That's going to take a while, and it's not going to happen till after March. You know what I mean? Like after I've completed this round of funding applications. When do I get to work, rather, to do the work that I really want to do? Well, not till later.
What is the work that you really want to do?
Well, I just really like writing. I mean, I like being with people. I love all the rehearsal stuff, don't get me wrong. But I've got this crazy idea that instead of the present specials as the way, so I watch specials, right, when we're on, right, for showings, and I watch on video, and I sort of sat back and I thought, well, where would I critique, if that wasn't my work, how would I critique this? And what rose to the top of my head was, well, where's the current day? Like, where's the present day in all this? So I've got this crazy idea that I want to run past Tansy. I want to see if there's any way I could write this crap. But essentially, to change specials, that we actually start with Cheryl and Simon running into each other outside the Disability Royal Commission, and they're about to give evidence. The evidence is the journey. And it's a bit like Wizard of Oz. Have you seen Wizard of Oz, the movie?
Yeah.
Well, Wizard of Oz, the movie, the three parenty or workery folk at the farm turn into the sort of allies and enemies in Oz. So I thought the commissioners could be Mr. Ginger, the headmistress, and Nurse Grease, but in the journey, they're playing their headmistress role, but they're also the commissioners. So that's where my crazy head's at the moment, of like bringing it into the modern day. And then because the real kicker to this whole story is that at the end, the Disability Royal Commission, despite hearing evidence from everyone and being rather split within, couldn't make up their minds about segregated, which is what they call special ed now, couldn't make up their minds about segregated education. So they decided that they were going to, hold on, let me see if I can get this right, 5 years they will make up their minds. So I can only imagine what must have been like for Cheryl and Simon characters to tell the whole story as we see it in the journey of specials, and at the end get that kick to the face that, yeah, we really want to think about that. I want to take our time.
What do you think the government or society could do to support disabled artists more?
Well, they could wind back the recent changes to the NDIS for a start. I mean, I was pretty shocked when I opened my new plan to see that the structures that I was really dependent on, like my gym membership, etc., and various other supports, were really cut back. So anyway, there's a start. I just can't work out. I mean, I don't want to go in there, but I just can't work out why there aren't more of us involved, like Senator Jordan, long name, sorry.
Jordan Steele John.
Exactly.
Yep.
I would love more of him. Don't look at me because, oh, not him, but you know what I mean, the job, right? I'd really love that. And, you know, like we did, this is the thing, it's not like all this stuff is unknown, because we went through that sort of whole flowering of the Anti-Discrimination Act and the Equal Employment Opportunity Act back in the 80s, or maybe it was the 90s, you know, somewhere in there, right? So a lot of that stuff has actually been rolled back. My very first job in journalism, as a completely green, useless bogan from the suburbs, was because it was a targeted journalism, like news cadetship, that wanted a cripple and a disabled person, and there I was. And so, you know, that sort of targeting changed my life. So I'd like to see more of that.
You're involved with CAC, the Facebook group. Can you tell me a bit about that and your involvement and why you wanted to be involved?
I think it was mid-2018, or was it mid-2019? No, I think it was mid-2018 it started. And, you know, everyone's full of talk. Yeah, we'll do this, we'll do that. And I'm like, no, we're going to do it. Mm-hmm. And so Jeremy Hawke and me became the co-admins of CAC, and it started as always a Australian group. There are a few other overseas people there, but it's primarily for Australians. And it's, for deaf and disabled creatives. And so we post bits of news and jobs and stuff like that. And it's had its ups and downs of living. And now it's in kind of a plateau-y kind of phase. But it's where I get to play my daily journalism sort of character that comes out and turns these little stories about disability arts and deaf arts across Australia into little stories, and, and I love pictures and all this. So I get to kind of play with that. But it's been quite a galvanising place at times as well, like politically active. And, of course, my big thing is more jobs for us across Australia and stop stealing our stories.
And having able-bodied people tell our stories. Yeah. I am going to finish on a light-hearted note and ask you where the best iced latte is.
Oh, Market Lane Coffee in Carlton.
Market Lane Coffee in Carlton.
And if that's closed, Vincent the dog. And if that's closed, the Brazilian on Elgin Street. Oh, my God, Brazilian iced latte. Have you ever had it?
What is a Brazilian iced latte?
Oh, it's a different type of coffee altogether. It tastes green. That's the only way I know how to describe it. It sort of tastes like the maturation process is slightly different. Tastes really intense. I don't know how to describe it, but you'll never forget it. Yeah, so Brazilian coffee on the street there. But for just your average coffee, Market Lane Coffee, Carlton.
Are you still having one every day?
Absolutely.
And as sort of the final wind-up question, is there any way that you can think of, like a call to action, any way that people can help support you or the projects that you're working on at the moment?
Yeah, watch this space. Like we will be doing some fundraising as this particular year goes on. And mainly I just hope everyone comes to the shows in 2026.
And so you're nearly 64.
I know, right?
What words of wisdom do you have for me? I feel like this whole hour and a half has been words of wisdom, but
I think it's really important to be able to take criticism. I'm not saying you don't. I actually think you're really good at this. But I think it's really important in general to be able to take criticism, to realise that my work is not me. My work is something that's out there. So you can criticise that, even though my heart's in it, of course. Nevertheless, it's out there. It's not me. And every time I've got feedback on anything, it's only ever made it better. So part of it is, I think part of being a really good artist is actually bolstering your ego so that you can flog your idea to people in positions of power, but having enough humility in your life so that you attract a really worthy, honest, open-hearted and creative team. It's sort of balancing that. I think that's really important. I think that's a different place for maybe everyone. And I feel like I've learnt from that.
This has been amazing. Thanks, Kath, for being on the first episode of Create and Amplify.
Oh, thanks. That was fabulous.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to Create and Amplify. This project has been assisted by the Australian Government through Creative Australia, its principal arts investment and advisory body. With thanks to producer Russell Osborne and editor and audio engineer Greg Smith. Until next time.